Good morning from La Mata. This is continuing on from the business in the Philippines. So why bother with the small business? I'm going to talk from a financial sense now, which is something that often doesn't get covered. But basically, what you got to think of is, I'll use my father as a good example. My father gets a military pension, plus a bit of a business pension, and obviously state pension. The problem you get is you start paying too much tax. Once you get up to retirement age, you're paying too much tax into the system. So if you had a business, say in the not in the Philippines, in the UK, or decide to work part-time, it's often just not worth the time because you're going to give away so much of it anyway. You end up giving away about 40%, which just makes it a pointless exercise. Now, the thing with the Philippines businesses, if you're out of the UK, is you wouldn't be taxed on that income. But also, if your partner or whatever you set up the business in the Philippines before you're coming up to retirement or before you're moving there, they're small to start in the first place. Now, if you look at the return on investment on a small business of a similar scale, similar investments, you're going to get more out of the Philippines. What do I mean? Like, I have investments in peer-to-peer lending, for example, and I'm getting around 10%. I've got a bad debtor at the moment, which has slightly affected that. It's down to, I think it's it's just under 10% at the minute. It was 10.4. But the point being is that's, say, 10% a year. But if you're running a small business in the Philippines, your profit margin will probably be more than that 10% per month, or probably getting, say, even on a reasonable basis, or very conservative, probably about 40% of your money back a year, 50% of money back, even after all the expenses, etc. And then in many cases, a lot higher. Like an investment in a sari-sari store, it's not high investment, but it's regular income. But a lot of the stuff doesn't get counted. Like, for example, it pays all the electric bill, it pays the water bill, ongoing, plus a bit of profit on top. Now, a lot of these things can be started before you move to the Philippines. A lot of it can fund other things, like, for example, building an apartment that you rent out, or because the money's sat there. But if it was coming out of your income in the West, it's taxed heavily at source. So the point being is, a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense in the West because financially you're taxed as soon as you touch it. Where having some of your money sent to the Philippines, work on something there, and then develop it there, it's sort of off the radar. It's in your wife's name, it's in your girlfriend's name, it's whatever. Nobody's really looking at it. And even though you're paying tax in the Philippines, it's not going to be as high as the tax you're paying currently in your own country, because it's not seen as part of your income. I hope that makes sense, because in the UK, I hit the 40% tax tariff on a regular basis, which is why I often only do contract work, because basically I hit the tax tariff and then I stop working. I just can't see the point of working to pay for people to sit on their backsides in the UK. I'd rather either let me work and pay me, but one thing I'm not doing is working and giving it away. So that from that point of view, a lot of the time it pays to do these small ventures. It's also how you can build up things like housing stock, because if you invested heavily, say, buying a piece of land, you can then do exactly as the Filipinos do, is they have their main house and then they build little apartments, they rent out, they rent out their sitting rooms, whatever, to keep the money rolling. Because what you try to do is build up a little bit of a portfolio of different things before you move to the Philippines. And that's why it can and does work. I mean, the Filipinos do it. It's why you see some Filipinos going from a little basic house where it may not have any paint on the walls, may not have windows, etc. But over the years, they've got a new car, it's all painted roof, extended it, got other buildings on the side that they rent out to relatives, friends, whoever, because they're setting up a retirement plan in exactly the same way. As you know, obviously they often use family members as an ongoing source of income with the old debt of gratitude, but at the same time, this business model works in the same way, where you're simply investing a bit at a time. So like I was saying with to Tim about the low business, although the low business won't make big money, you probably make, say, $1,000 a week on it. But once you get to a certain point, you've got that money in the bank and can then use it for something else. And you kickstart something else and keep the low business going as well. So like say you start a sari store, or just start with snacks basically to begin with. And then the following month you start doing fizzy pop or whatever. You build it up, just an example, because you can do it with the same invested money. And that's on a micro basis. Obviously you can do that in a much bigger way as well, because what we did is we invested $250,000 at a time in modular construction, which is why we built more and more units as time went on, because we put $250,000 to each building, and as we had the budget to do it, we constructed it. And that, it works. It really does work. I mean, that's why we can move to the Philippines and afford to stay there long term even now. But while we're here in Spain, we're actually having other work done in the Philippines to finish another apartment. Because we don't bring money out of the Philippines generally. We leave the money there to develop things. So, I mean, we could actually go back at any point because it's already self-sufficient. So you have to bear these sort of things in mind, and it's why it can make sense. Because I know a lot of people go, well, it only makes this amount of money. You know what? Look how much your pension makes. Because I tell you now, a lot of these businesses give you a bigger return on investment than your pension will. The big problem in the UK now is people are sort of, oh, hang on a minute, the big companies aren't getting the management funds of people's money. People are getting more of a choice of control over their pensions because it's been a gravy train for a lot of insurance companies. So you need to look at it logically. If it's going to make money, how much is it going to make? How much is it going to make a year? Can you, even if you're working with somebody else, what are you going to get back out of it a year? Because if you're getting a certain amount every year, that may pay for your condo by the time you get up to retirement. That may pay for you to have 3 or 4 apartments. That may pay for you to not worry about electric and water bills. Because one thing it is a local income. It's not going to get fluctuated by exchange rates, etc. It's going to only be affected by the local market. And that's why it works, it's why it's viable. And even buying land in the Philippines, if it's in the right locations, is simply just going to keep going up in value. There's no ifs, no buts. One thing that isn't growing more in this planet is land. We've got 2 lots. We've got one in the mountains and one where our apartments are. They've both gone up in value. Even if we did absolutely nothing, they're still in high, you know, they're still going up in value. But in Minglanilla, it's developing around us. The mountain lot, there's been, I think there's 2 subdivisions have opened nearby. Because of the location, the infrastructure is going in. Once the infrastructure goes in, it's going to be viable to construct up there. For us, it's just too much of a headache to move water and stuff there, so we just bought it and left it. But these are the things that can make money, and it doesn't take a huge amount of investment to get it started, which is primarily the main motivation in this. The other side of this being is a lot of guys complain they get burned by their partners. Well, if your partner's running these things while you're overseas, then you already got a low investment, low risk, and able to see if they can manage a business as well as can they be trusted. I can't see the downside in this. You know, at the end of the day, you know, when people go, oh, the brother-in-law did this, or that, you know what? You've invested a little bit of money. You've got all the headaches out of the way. But on the other hand, if it all works, you don't hear people complaining, because when it does work, it works well. Thanks for watching.